Hi everyone, it's Tamara here. This time I'm going to be using a fall image but giving it a bit of a Christmas twist so that I can use it for some of my Christmas cards for this season. I love using images for different seasons that they might not be intended for, and Silas the Sparrow from Cozy Fall Birds from Sweet November Stamps I thought was perfect for this. I just love the way that little eyebrow is raised, and when I have this stamp set from Stampin' Bella, I thought the sentiment from that stamp set worked perfectly with that look. I'm going to be creating a mini slimline card and using the Slim Stitches die set from Pink Fresh Studio for the background. Now I grabbed a piece of smooth white cardstock, just cut a little bit bigger than my background panel will be. I've grabbed a post-it and Distress Oxides in Mowed Lawn, Rustic Wilderness and Chipped Sapphire, and I've just got a post-it there so I can use that to hold my panel once I've done a bit of ink blending. I'm using my Ranger Dome Sponge applicators and just working in circular motions to get my blend together. Now as you can see, I didn't bring that Mowed Lawn up far, and then I brought the Rustic Wilderness only part way down, and then I'm bringing the Mowed Lawn up to meet it. I just find that helps with a nice smooth transition between a lighter color and a darker color. So I'm just going to work between those colors to get a nice smooth blend, and then grabbing that post-it to hold that so I don't get any finger marks on there. I'm going to do the same with the Chipped Sapphire. So again, I'm only putting a little bit of Chipped Sapphire there and then bringing the Rustic Wilderness up to meet it. So once I get a nice smooth blend, I just feel that Chipped Sapphire just isn't quite dark enough, so I end up bringing in just a little bit of black soot just to add a little bit more contrast with that Rustic Wilderness up the top. So I don't put a large amount in, just a small amount, just to get that bit of contrast then, and then we'll just set that panel aside to dry before working on our colouring. Now with our colours, I'm just going to colour these eyes. Now there's not a large amount of space there, so I'm not going to worry about putting actually any colour in, but I want to show that it is still coloured and add a little bit of shadow. So I've just used my C markers to get some shadowing into those eyes. Now I'm going in with my BV23 and just using flicking motions. It's really good. The artist has actually popped some lines in, so it's great to be able to follow along with the same angle that those lines are. Really helps you get that flow of the feathers coming out from the bird. So now that I've got that shadow color in, I'm going to bring in my E84. So all my colors are going to be just up in that top left hand corner as I go through each of the colors. So I'm just flicking down now. You can see that I'm just raising my hand as I'm doing my flicking, and I'm moving that panel around so that I'm kind of in the same angle as the lines that I'm going to be actually coloring. So you can just see me moving that around as I work on my coloring. Our next color is E81. And just adding a little bit of shadow into where those eye sockets are, because they're a bit recessed. You want them to be shadowed. And again, just doing that light flick, just extending out that E84 with that E81 working into that white cardstock. And our final color in this combo is going to be E50. Now you can see that I've lost a little bit of contrast with this colouring, so I'm going to bring all those colours in again. I will show you, but I will actually just fasten it up a little bit faster because I'm really doing exactly the same thing, but I just want to show you how this actually adds a little bit of extra contrast by going in a second time with the same colours, just to reinforce all of those pieces of feather. So I'm just going in with those eyes again and slowly flicking those out. So pretty much doing exactly the same, but just adding that extra detail and extra contrast with our colors. E81's next, blending out those eyes and then extending out that E84 again. And just moving that cardstock around So we're getting a nice shape to his feathers. And then our final flick out with our E50. And we've now got a beautiful blend out of each of those colours, and we'll move on to his wings. So we're just doing a little flicking where that little cardigan is throwing some shadow, and obviously where that wing folds over. E84 is next. And I will go over and do the same as what I did up on his head, but I'm not going to show you for the wings because they're quite small, and I did it exactly the same way. And E50 is next. So I'll do that second go over off camera, and then I'll show you doing his little belly and his tail feathers. So obviously that little cardigan's going to be throwing a shadow, as well as that tree branch, which I nearly forgot. So that's going to throw a shadow, and then the base of his tail will be in shadow as well. So we've added that shadow in. E84 is next. E81 to blend out those two shadows that are thrown, and flicking up to add that texture at the bottom. And E50 is next. Now I'm going to go quickly again for the next one because I'm going to show you that again to reinforce our shadows. I'm going to show you this time, but again I've just sped it up quite fast because I'm doing exactly the same thing as before. E81's next, and then our final pass over with our E50. Now we're going to colour up his hat. Now I'm wanting a really nice dark contrast here, so I'm using my N5 marker just to add my shadowing in. So obviously the way his head's tilted back will be quite in shadow, and the base on that right hand side. Now I'm blending that out with the E19 and just adding a nice little light flick around where that little fold in that hat is. Our next colour in the combo is R27 to work out that E19. The E19's a brown colour, but it's got a lot of red to it, so it works really well with the red markers. And our final colour in this combo is R24. Now I'm going to speed through again, but I'm going to reinforce. So we've lost a little bit of contrast there, so I'm going to bring all those same colours back in again and blend out that N5 marker with that E19. Again, just flicking that little fold where that will be a little bit of shadow in there as well. The R27 next, and our final marker, the R24. I'm going to use the same markers for that little cardigan. So we see where his little feathers fold over the edge, and also where that edge of that folded portion of the cardigan folds over will be in shadow, and where that little button folds over will be in shadow as well. So I just want to show you, using that N marker and a brown marker, that you might not have a lot of dark reds in your stash, so using a grey marker or a brown marker can add some nice contrast to your red markers, or any marker that you have. As Amy Young always says, it's your darker colours make your lighter colours brighter. So we'll blend that out with the R27, and that R24 marker we'll bring back in again as our final blend out. Now I'm going to again speed through a double coating so you can see that contrast with the hat up the top. We want to make sure we add that same amount. So we're going to go back over, but I've sped this up because I'm doing exactly the same thing again, using exactly the same markers to make sure we've got some nice contrast there. Now we'll bring that R27 in. And you can just see that second pass over just adds so much more contrast to our colouring. And rather than grab out a heap of markers, I'm going to do a red leaf to match in with that red outfit that we've got on Silas. So added that N5 as a shadow, blending that out with the E19. And then we'll bring those red markers in again, the R27. So obviously where that leaf folds over, we'll be throwing a bit of shadow, and the base of the leaf will be in shadow as well. Now I am leaving just a little bit of white cardstock at the top because I want that to be the brightest color. So I'm only going to do one pass over of the R24 on that, just to make that look a little bit brighter than the lower section of R24, which is going to have a double layer over it. So bring that R27 in, and then you'll see when I go over with that R24, it just looks a little bit lighter up the top because it's only had one pass over of color. Now his little button, to keep in with that Christmas theme, I'm going to add a green button in there. So I only need 2 colors because of how small it is. So I've got one contrasting color and then the lighter color to add that shadow down the bottom and the lighter color up the top. And I'm only going to use 2 markers in this leaf because I've printed this out quite small. It's not a huge amount of space on that branch. So I've again left that little bit of white cardstock up the top. So when we do pass over now with that R23, it's going to look a lot lighter where we've only gone over once with that E23 marker rather than where it's gone over twice. And I'm going to use the same colors for his beak and his claws. So E08 is our darkest color. Blend that out with the Y38 and then the Y35. And again, I'm just going to repeat those colors again just to reinforce that shadow. Obviously where his beak's in shadow as his head's tilted is on the left, and obviously where his body will be throwing those claws in shadow as well. And that's all our coloring done. Now our background panel is dry. I'm just going to use my Stitch Slimline rectangle die and my purple tape to hold that in place and run that through my die cutting machine. Now once that's cut out, I'm going to actually use the Slim Stitches die, but I'm going to be actually sticking this directly onto the actual die itself, centering it to where I want to make sure that stitching is centered on my panel. So I'm going to tape that down directly to the die itself and run that through my die cutting machine. Just use my picker to pick that up and pull off that purple tape. It did leave a little bit on the back, but it's going to be stuck down. So I've tried to pick it off here, but then I think no one's going to see it once it's stuck down. Now you can see that beautiful stitching detail. It just adds to that ink blended panel. Now because the Stampin' Bella stamps are rubber backed, I can get rid of the rubber mat from my Misti and pop in my piece of black cardstock and get our little sentiment lined up for stamping. So we'll line that up and attach that to the front of the Misti. Get our anti-static powder tool and give that a coverage. And using my Versa Watermark ink, we'll get that stamped up. Stamp that. Make sure that's still in the right place, and we're going to give that another stamp to make sure we've got a good impression. I've grabbed out my folded piece of printer paper and my Stampendous white embossing powder. I'll get that sprinkled on. Tap off any excess, and I've preheated my heat tool. Gone into the back first to get rid of any particles that might be there. And then we'll get that all nice and melted. Give that a bit of time to dry before I wipe it over with my cloth to get rid of the powder from the anti-static powder tool. Now I've grabbed out my Tonic trimmer because I'm going to trim this down to make a little sentiment strip. So just adding the ends to make sure it's even each side, and then the same top and bottom. And now we've got the perfect size sentiment strip. So because we laid that down flat, I'm going to pop up our sentiment and also Silas with some foam tape. So I'm just going to cut this all to size. So with Silas, I'm going to do a bit right down the middle, and then also put a couple of pieces on the actual end of the branch and that leaf. Now I'm just going to line that sentiment up where I'm wanting it so I can place Silas down. I'm just wanting that branch to be right on the edge of that ink blended panel. So just using my reversible tweezers to help me line that up. And then we'll get rid of the release paper on the back of our sentiment, and again line that up with the edge of that ink blended panel up the top and line that up so it's nice and straight. Now because this is a pretty plain card, I wanted to add some embellishment. So I had these like clear dots in my stash. So I'm going to add a few to kind of bring your eye up from our Silas image up to our sentiment. So I'm using one kind of medium one and one small one, top and bottom. So I'm just going to line them up where I'm wanting, and then we're going to get them stuck down. So I'm just using a jewel picker to line them up. And this Barely Art Precision Glue tube is so good. It just puts that small amount of glue that I need. It flows really nicely but not too far, so you can just put the exact amount that you need down, and it dries clear and it dries quickly, which is really good as well. So I would highly recommend this glue if you can get a hold of it. So put another little dot here. You don't need much to adhere these down, and that will dry clear, as you can see. And this is the finished card for this tutorial. I just absolutely adore Silas, and with that raised eyebrow, I thought it worked perfectly with this sentiment, Dear Santa, define good. And just adding a few little extra details with the slim stitches and the adhesive dots, I think just really makes for a simple card but quite effective. I hope you've enjoyed this card making tutorial. If you have, please hit the like button, and if you'd like to see any future videos, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye.